It was incompletely presented. As soon as we got in and we did our due diligence, right, as good as anybody in the world right now, and I guarantee you that Vlad cannot tell me another musical genre.
The courtroom battle surrounding Lil Durk's federal case has spiraled into one of the most chaotic legal sagas the rap world has ever seen. A collision of hidden evidence, alleged threats, government secrecy, and a defense team determined to expose every flaw in the prosecution's strategy. What began as a straightforward murder-for-hire indictment has evolved into a legal war zone, where every move is scrutinized and every revelation pushes the case further into uncharted territory. As Durk sits behind bars inside the Metropolitan Detention Center in Los Angeles, the fight for his freedom now hinges on whether the judicial system itself broke the rules long before he ever stepped foot into a courtroom. The defense insists the entire prosecution has been compromised, poisoned by secrecy, fear, and federal misconduct. And in their eyes, if the government can violate the Constitution, then the government should bear the consequences. The core of the controversy exploded on November 14, 2025, when Durk's attorneys filed a blistering motion accusing the prosecution of hiding death threats made against Judge Patricia Donahue and lead prosecutor Ian Ianiello. These threats were not mild or dismissive. They were violent, graphic, and serious enough to trigger a federal emergency response. Yet despite their severity, the defense was kept completely in the dark for more than 7 months. It wasn't until October 1, 2025 that Durk's legal team learned that the judge presiding over his crucial bail hearing had received threats allegedly from supporters of Durk, and had continued ruling on motions involving him without disclosing that potential conflict. Under the law, any judge who becomes the target of threats connected to a defendant is required to consider recusing themselves to protect the fairness of the proceedings. But nobody told Durk's lawyers what was happening behind the scenes. Nobody gave them a chance to request a new judge. And now the defense argues that every ruling made during that period, including the devastating denial of Durk's bond, is tainted beyond repair. In the world of federal criminal procedure, transparency is not optional. It is the foundation that keeps the system upright. When prosecutors choose to conceal information that affects judicial impartiality, they undermine the entire process. That is the argument driving Durk's team as they demand nothing less than the dismissal of the entire case. If dismissal is not granted, they want the indictment moved out of California entirely.
To like say Rome and then to Dubai, they had it stop at Rome. For example, I can't remember where. People were just reaching out to us, you know the government's wrong, right? You do know that music, you don't go to a studio.
Relocated to Oregon or another district where judges and prosecutors have not been placed under threat. What they are describing is a courtroom infected by fear, secrecy, and bias. A judicial environment where their client cannot receive a fair trial. And the motion they filed leaves no ambiguity. They believe the violations of due process are so severe that only wiping the slate clean can restore justice. The government, of course, sees it differently. Prosecutors insist the threats were isolated incidents, that they withheld the information only to protect the integrity of the investigation. But their counterargument becomes murky when viewed alongside their own actions. While dismissing the threats as overblown, they simultaneously used those same threats as justification for demanding an anonymous jury. They cited the danger posed by Durk supporters, the intimidation risk, the possibility of interference. It is a contradiction that doesn't sit well with legal analysts or the defense. If the threats were serious enough to lock down jury identities, then they were serious enough to disclose to the defense immediately. And if they were not serious enough to disclose, then why use them to justify heightened security and restrictions? Meanwhile, the evidence against Durk remains the government's biggest weapon. Financial trails connecting credit cards to flights, hotel rooms, and supplies. Travel logs showing private jet movement. Alleged wiretaps describing coordination. A confidential witness whose testimony has shifted multiple times, creating more uncertainty than clarity. And the tragedy at the center of it all, the death of Savia Lolpab Robinson in a botched hit that federal prosecutors insist was meant for Quando Rondo as payback for King Von's murder. The government paints Durk as the mastermind who sought revenge through calculated planning, using resources, affiliates, and coded communication to execute a retaliatory killing. The defense paints him as the victim of unreliable witnesses, exaggerated allegations, and a prosecution desperate to connect dots that don't actually line up. At the same time, the outside world is not sitting quietly. Every new document, every motion, every leak turns the internet into a battleground of theories, debates, conspiracies, and predictions. Some fans believe Durk is the victim of a system determined to take down high-profile rappers by any means necessary. Others argue the evidence is too detailed for coincidence, that prosecutors would not risk a federal indictment unless they were sure. What complicates the public's understanding even further is the misinformation swirling around the case. Viral posts using movie clips, fabricated quotes, or exaggerated details create a blurred line between reality and entertainment. Meanwhile, legal experts warn that cases like this are rarely simple. When federal prosecutors go after someone, it's because they think they can win. And the conviction rate in federal court is a chilling reminder of the uphill battle Durk is facing. Inside the jail, Durk's alleged misconduct became another layer of conflict. The confiscated Apple Watch, the alleged attempt to destroy the device, the claims of unauthorized three-way calls. These incidents are being used by prosecutors to portray him as a risk to the integrity of the judicial process, a man willing to manipulate circumstances even while incarcerated. His attorneys, however, counter that these accusations are exaggerated and strategically designed to keep him locked up without bond. Even $1 million cash offer backed by property and professional security wasn't enough to change the judge's mind. As the January 20th, 2026 trial date approaches, uncertainty blankets the entire case. The motion to dismiss could reshape everything. The push to change districts could uproot the proceedings entirely. The awaiting appeals could drag out timelines for months, even years. And hovering above it all is the most brutal reality of federal law. If Durk loses at trial, he is facing life behind bars. No shortcuts, no reduced sentences, no easy deals. This is a life case with no margin for error. Yet even in the face of federal power, Durk's defense remains relentless. Led by the billion-dollar lawyer, a man known for pulling off improbable victories, they continue dissecting every inconsistency, every procedural misstep, every unreliable witness. They know the odds. They know the stakes. And they know that fighting a federal indictment requires strategy, precision, and a willingness to challenge the system itself. As the next hearing approaches, one thing is clear. This is no longer just a criminal case. It is a test of the justice system's fairness, transparency, and integrity. Whether Durk walks free or faces the harshest punishment imaginable, this legal saga will be remembered for the chaos, controversy, and questions it unleashed.